Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now as we are approaching the second part of the conference, and I hope that you enjoy the first two companies that they present. There's a great potential for our investors here and across Europe. And the second part of the presentation, we start with a company that there will be history in making. The first company, first American life science company that we will be bringing to the Warsaw Stock Exchange. And maybe this will be a pivotal point for our cooperation between the United States and Poland. And I believe it is going to be a big success. And we also assist the company with raising the capital and accelerate their progress. The company already have a product in the market in Poland. So some people already familiar with the product. Today we have a presentation and demonstration of the product, so this could be very interesting presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you the company that could be the history in making first company on the new Connect, Milestone Scientific. Please give the warm welcome to our presenters.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to thank very much the Warsaw Stock Exchange and our friends at WDM who've made all this possible. In listening to the speaker earlier who represented Deloitte, it was particularly interesting because all of the difficulties that he laid out for us regarding medical throughout the world are primarily answered in the area of drug delivery by our products at Milestone Medical. So I'd like to introduce the world authority on computerized injections and the inventor of our broad platform of technology, Dr. Hockman.
Thank you, Leonard, and I'd like to thank WDM and all of the colleagues from WDM for having us here today. I think it's quite exciting. We're very excited about participating in Poland, and as you'll see as the presentation unfolds, you'll understand why. I'd like just to get into the clinical aspects. Since I am the clinical director of Milestone Medical, I just want to go through much more of a clinical presentation, and then we're going to have our CFO, Joseph D'Agostino. He's going to go over the numbers, if you will, the marketing, and as well as the forecast, forward-thinking forecasts that we have. It's very interesting that we discussed this morning several pharma companies. And as you know, pharma companies are primarily interested in drugs. And these drugs, as our last presenter discussed, have to be targeted in a specific area. And one of the most important aspects of drug delivery today is how do you target that drug? And as we know, there is a variety of ways in which drugs get into our bodies and become therapeutic in their action. Many times we take these drugs intravenously. Other times we take them in an oral form as a pill and we ingest them and then they go to work. And then sometimes we do them via subcutaneous delivery in which we actually target that drug specifically where we want it to go. So our niche, and it is a niche in the healthcare industry, is subcutaneous drug delivery, which is a major area of drug delivery for all pharmaceuticals. So we're not concerned really with the drug as much as how that drug is delivered. So our niche in the medical market, we've developed two instruments that have advanced this concept of drug delivery, which hasn't changed in over 150 years. This syringe that you see here was developed 150 years ago. How many other medical devices are still in use today that are still being used on a routine basis in medicine? Very, very few. So medicine has really evolved to a much more sophisticated level, but the ability to deliver that drug in a more sophisticated way has been very limited. That drug delivery system that you see here on the screen was originally designed for one purpose, and one purpose only: convenience. It was only convenient to place a drug in an aqueous solution, place it into that vessel, and then inject it into the body. And we typically inject that that drug into the body via a needle. This is a very, very large needle. But as lay individuals of you sitting there, how many individuals enjoy getting an injection? I would say nobody. Why? Because we know that there's pain related to that injection. So injections universally, globally, produce the same outcome for all patients. That's fear and anxiety. Now, I ask you, what causes that pain? Is it the needle? Or is it the delivery system? It's the delivery system. Because needles have been used for centuries in acupuncture. They don't produce the pain. You'll get a stimulation from that needle transecting through the mucosa, but the vast majority of the pain and discomfort that we exhibit as individuals comes from the limitation of this delivery system, this vessel, if you will, of pushing a drug into those tissues. So as children, when we go to our physician to get a vaccination, and we heard certain things about vaccinations, futuristic implications of many new drugs that will come onto the marketplace. Do you know what the biggest limitation of those drugs are? Not the pharmacokinetics of the drug. It's actually compliance of that drug going forward. How many of you are familiar with the blockbuster drug Gardasil? Well, if you're not, let me tell you what Gardasil is. It's a monoclonal antibody that was developed to prevent cancer, cervical cancer. So a lot of young ladies get this injection, and it requires 3 regimens. What's the biggest problem for those patients coming back getting the 2nd and 3rd injection? Because it's a subcutaneous injection. It can't be ingested, because these are large molecules that would break down in the GI system if it was ingested. The biggest problem that these companies see is having those patients come back repeatedly for those injections. It's the same problem that we have in diabetes. If you know any family members that have diabetic conditions, you know that there is a burnout of having to give yourself an injection on a repeated basis. We can solve those problems, and we have solved those problems. The way that we looked at this is anew. We have advanced the art and science of medicine in so many different ways as it occurs to robotics for heart surgery, minimally invasive techniques. So we applied that same concept as it related to drug delivery. And we went back to the drawing board, and we reinvented the concept of subcutaneous injections. In 2001, we received a very broad patent related to this. And what did that patent protect? What did that patent cover? Basically, what that patent covered were all of the disposables that we use create a certain amount of resistance. And what we decided to do is we knew that pain was not from the needle, we knew it was from the infusion of that drug into the body. So what we did is we developed a technique in which we could determine exactly what is the pressure and what is the rate of the fluid at the tip of the needle as the injection was being given. So we can deliver a drug into your body now through a hollow bore needle below the pain perception level. So that was our first level of identification. That was our first discovery. And the instrument that you see up front here is our prototype, our first generation instrument. We called it CompuFlow, computer flow technology. And what this technology had was something very, very unique called dynamic pressure sensing. Dynamic pressure sensing. We call it DPS for short. What is DPS? It's the ability to determine what is happening at the tip of the needle. We can get that information in real time for the first time, and we can control it. That exit pressure, the fluid going into the body, becomes the controller to the system. That has never been before developed. When you look at this archaic system, there's only one thing that you can do when you encounter resistance at the tip of the needle. What's that? You push harder on the plunger. And as you push harder on the plunger, what are you actually doing? You're increasing the velocity at which the stream comes out of the tip of the needle, and you can't control the rate or the pressure because you're just responding to the back pressure that you're feeling. What we did is we created an algorithm that allows us to very accurately determine what is happening at the tip of the needle And then that information becomes the controller to our system. So we control rate and we control pressure. Okay. Well, why is that so interesting? What's the value in that? Well, remember where we started in our conversation. We said we want to give a subcutaneous injection painlessly. Well, if I can control rate and I can control pressure, I can now deliver that drug through those tissues in a very, very specified way. But with many technologies, when you develop it, there are other repercussions, other outgrowths of that technology that you might not have first anticipated. And let me share with you another concept related to being able to control the pressure and the rate and deliver that in real time. This is a study in which we took 4 groups of patients, 4 different types of tissues, and we started measuring, using our first-generation technology, started measuring the pressure at the tip of the needle. And what we found was something very unique. We heard some mention this morning about histology and different tissue types. Well, what we found is that specific tissues require certain rates and certain pressures. So we can actually identify the tissue that the needle is embedded in based on that pressure. Because as we saw this morning, all the body is composed of different types of tissues. So now with our technology, we can identify where that needle is, where that target is, with this ability to control pressure and rate. So now what we have is the ability to target where that needle positioning is based on the position of the needle and the feedback that we're getting to our instrument. It's never been before developed. For you as the analyst sitting here, trying to understand, well, where are we going to be able to develop this? How are we going to commercialize this? And where is the return on the investment? Well, we have a breakthrough design related to this. It's computer controlled, so we can gain data, information. We can create a report from that injection. When you give an injection with this type of syringe, there's no way to record the record of that injection. And as we heard this morning, as it relates to compliance and hospitals and reducing costs in the medical arena, you're going to have to prove that. Well, we have a technology now that can create an injection, record it, and then show the benefits from it scientifically. In addition to that, another part of our system is having a disposable element to it. So we have the instruments that have been developed, and then we have an annuity stream from the disposables. So all of our systems are designed that way so that we create safety for the patients, preventing cross-contamination, but as well as revenues for the company. So it's a very, very good model, a very smart model to use. And that's the basic model that we've used in all of the different instruments that we have now developed. This was our first commercialized instrument, as was mentioned previously, that is in dentistry. And we have won awards for this. This has been in production now for almost 10 years. And when we first launched this latest generation, we proved a lot of the concepts that I'm going to be sharing with you related to the medical application. But the greatest proof of all is how it reacts to the patient. So this company is very altruistic. We know we're changing the experience for the patient. We're changing the experience for the clinician because we're reducing the stress related to this concept of giving injections. So as it relates to pain perception, we've overcome that. We have scaled that mountain, if you will, and have proven it scientifically. We have over 40 publications related to this concept of reducing pain-disruptive behavior and pain related to subcutaneous injections. But that's not where we want to stop. And this is where we take off from here. This is Milestone Medical, a redefining of a standard of care as it relates to innovation in drug delivery. So here's another injection that many of you are familiar with, either directly or indirectly. It relates to the epidural injection, one of the most widely used injections of all of medicine today. How many of you have either spouses that have had childbirth, where they give them an injection to block out a regional anesthesia to block the lower extremities? Or how many individuals sitting here know somebody who has had a hip replacement or a knee replacement? Or how about back pain, in which you have a pain management situation in which steroids have to be used? Well, the way that they're used is just like those other injections that I discussed with you before. It requires a hollow bore needle, a drug, and then a technique. And this technique is a very important technique because you're trying to get the drug as close as you can to the spinal cord. And the spinal cord is a very, very important component anatomically of our bodies because that's where all the sensory input goes back up into the brainstem. So here you can see that just on the US market for childcare, this is 2.5 million births a year are given with epidurals. And that does not even include the implications of pain management like steroid injections that many, many people undergo on an annual basis. So what are the complications and limitations of this injection? Well, it could be as benign as prolonged anesthesia or a paresthesia, which they call it, or it could be as life-threatening as death. Well, that's not life-threatening anymore because everything's over at that point. If that needle goes too far and hits the spinal cord and that drug gets infused into the spinal cord itself, it's paralyzing your ability to breathe. A wet tap is when that needle penetrates a space here, which I'll show you. And here you see on the right-hand screen here, that central cord there, that's the spinal cord. And where you see the outer membrane here, that's the dura that surrounds the spinal cord. And then where you're trying to position that needle is in a position about 1 to 2 millimeters outside of that space. So it's a very, very, very small space. The technique here is to place the needle to transect it through the tissues subjectively with your thumb on the back of this plunger until you feel it give. That's as simple as it is. But it's very, very, very complicated to find out, is that the subjective feeling, or did I find a low pressure gradient? And that's why these injections are so complicated. Usually it takes 1 to 2 years to become proficient at performing the epidural injection. Anesthesiologists, it's a subcategory, the individuals that use this on a routine basis. They have to specialize in being able to perform this injection. In fact, I'm going to share with you a training video so you get an understanding of how complicated this is.
You will now notice pressure on your back,
This is
but you will feel no
a training video that one of the large companies that manufacture these needles developed. And here is the anesthesiologist placing the needle in the dorsum of the back, as I showed you before in that diagram, and he's trying to find that little 1 to 2 millimeter space. So he first places the needle in,
countermark resistance from the tissue.
and then he attaches a syringe called a loss of resistance syringe, which is fluid-filled. And now the whole concept here is to try to see if there's going to be a change in pressure. So he's trying to sense when there's this change in pressure so that he knows he's in that epidural space. So he advances that needle.
In this case, the needle position must obviously be realigned, since deep inside,
So he's not really sure where the needle is. And this is a key opinion leader, a world leader that they're filming is showing this.
to the level of the skin.
So he's going to start
and
this
then
procedure
adjust
again.
the needle to a different angle before advancing it.
Okay, without kind of grossing you out and making you watch this, what happens here is he can't locate the space. And he's going to have to reposition the needle and start all over again. Now, when you speak to anesthesiologists, you ever ask them, have you ever had a problem performing this injection? You know what they say? No, I never have a problem. I get it all the time. But the reality is they miss more often than they admit.
Obviously, have to reselect the basic puncture site, although
I'm going to contrast that to the technology that we developed. this is a computer-controlled system in which you prime the system, just the way that I'm showing you, within 1 to 2 seconds. And then you have a screen on the front here. And that screen, you can see there's a number down here below. And that pressure is being read in real time. So you're going to get audible feedback, and you're going to get a visual feedback. This is a simulator block that they teach anesthesiologists how to give an epidural. The plastic component here represents the bone, and you can see the vertebral column. And then in the center here is a little tube here that has a space 1 to 2 millimeters. So I'm going to try to find that space. So all I have to do is I just place the needle in that position. I keep advancing it. You hear the pressure going up, and if you look at the front of the screen, the pressure goes up all the way. And then once you enter into the space, the pressure drops down to 0. So I'm just going to advance it, advance it, advance it. I feel a little bit of that dura, and now the pressure drops down to 0. I know this is a little difficult for you to see from where you're seated, but if we have those meetings, the one-on-one meetings, then you'll see how simple this is. It really takes all of the subjectiveness of that technique of trying to feel that change into a very objective feedback. Why is this more sensitive? Because we're using a pressure transducer that's 50 times more sensitive than the human finger can discriminate. So we're getting this information in real time, and it's fed back to the clinician. So instead of that injection being a blind injection, for the first time, they're getting real-time feedback. Okay? So we can differentiate the type of tissue that we're in from that information. The other critical element to that is once the injection is performed, it becomes a data record. And we have a port on the back here, an RS port here, that we can download that. So we verify for either clinical studies or in that hospital setting that the physician performed that properly. So this is really a very big change in the way that innovation is going to affect improving healthcare. So we can reduce the inadvertent misses that are occurring right now in this one injection through this technology. The other thing that it does is that since the injection's being performed, and I'll show you it being clinically here, since the injection is actually being performed, in real time, that feedback is going to tell you if you've moved out of that space, or if you advanced it too far and you're starting to touch the spinal cord. Okay. So here's one of the first clinical studies that was actually done at University of Texas, Herman Memorial Hospital. And what they found with using this type of technology is they could clearly identify the different tissue types here. You can see in this grid here. In this chart over here, we can see the 3 different tissue types based on the density of that tissue. We can identify it and record it. And then one of the other studies that was done subsequent to that at the University of Texas was this study in which they identified the epidural space 100% of the time based on this technology. But what went beyond that is when they were infusing that drug, if they moved out of the space within 1 to 2 seconds, they were able to detect that. So from this study, they have created the ability to conclude that they now have an objective criteria for performing this injection. And the ability to have a sound and visual feedback really enabled them, for the first time, to guide them to be able to perform that injection on a highly predictable basis. So the information we're giving to the user is real-time feedback, just like if I asked you today, you need to get to a different part of Warsaw or a different part of Poland, you probably would not use a map today. What would you use? A GPS, because you're getting real-time feedback on how to get to that location. That's what this technology does. It gives you that information in real time, allowing you to achieve that. So our success rates obviously are going to go up, and we mitigate the risks. And as we know, we spoke about systemic changes in our patients are becoming obese because of their dietary habits, and also the ability of being able to treat those patients has become much more complicated. Because of our ability to document these injections, it's giving us a medical compliance issue here that we're really addressing that nobody else can address. And that will also give us the ability for verification of these techniques. Bottom line, this becomes a cost savings technology to the end user, to the hospital environment, as well as the outpatient care services. So the value proposition as we see it is through all of these different cascades. The patient, make it a safer, more effective injection. For the doctor, obviously, it's going to be simpler, easier, and faster for them to achieve. And for the hospital, it's reducing those healthcare costs, as we spoke about before. If you have a situation where a patient has to stay 4 or 5 days longer in the hospital because they either took the wrong medication or they had a prolonged paresthesia from an epidural, those are costs that the hospital has to be burdened with now. So we believe we have a very, very strong business model related to one of the largest injections used in medicine to date. A second instrument that we've developed here is related to another very broad systemic issue, that's osteoarthritis. As we know, we said again, patients are becoming more obese. The weight that they're living longer, people are doing more exercise, and what they're doing is they're breaking down their joints. So we developed an instrument that will allow us to take another drug, hyaluronic acid or several of the other medications, inject that because we can localize just as we can identify the epidural space, we can also identify the interarticular space. So this is the second instrument that you see there on the table there. And this was designed to allow us to identify this space here without having to use ionized radiation, like fluoroscopy or ultrasound. So we have guidance from the tip of the needle when we reach the right location. So the second study that was done, once again, we can differentiate tissue type based on this concept of exit pressure. What we demonstrated from this is, once again, the ability to advance the science and delivery of drugs in a way that hasn't been done in over 150 years. So I ask you, looking at this image on this screen in front of you, what type of innovation has been occurring in this area, this niche area of subcutaneous delivery over 150 years? I venture to guess nothing, really. I mean, you can look at some of the instruments that have been developed, but they're mostly been developed for convenience, like an EpiPen. And if you know anybody who has ever had an EpiPen used on them, although it's a life-threatening situation right at that moment, it's very painful and it's very destructive. We overcome those issues. So it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce you to this technology. Hopefully, if you find some interest in this, we'll have further discussions a little bit later. But what I'm going to turn now the presentation over is to Joe D'Agostino, our CFO, and he's going to go over the investment highlights of this.
Set to go here. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation today to present Milestone companies to the group. Thank you again to the first Global Science Conference here in Warsaw and the sponsors for the show. This afternoon, I have the pleasure to introduce in more detail Milestone Medical. Milestone Medical is a new company focused on technology and the development of two instruments as identified by Dr. Hochman, the epidural instrument and the intra-articular instrument. Not only do we have two new state-of-the-art technology-driven instruments, but we also have an existing market that's substantial for both instruments. Additionally, we've signed a 3-year agreement with a third-party distributor to market and to sell the instrument, the epidural instrument, in the US and Canada, even before we have a certification, a CE, or a 510K FDA approval. So, for all intents and purposes, we have a win-win-win situation. Brand new medical instruments, state-of-the-art technology, an existing market that exists, that's a mega market, billions of dollars for both instruments. Be careful when it gets. And we have a distributor in the US and Canada that's already signed on for a 3-year agreement. So before I discuss any further on Milestone Medical, let me just show we're aligned here. Let me just show our safe harbor statement, because we are publicly traded.
I showed that.
Oh, you did, right? Okay. So we're going to move on. So, as Dr. Hochman indicated, everything is based on the technology that we've developed for these two instruments, first in the dental arena and then now moving into the medical side of the business. We know that we can find the right locations, and we know that the instruments are utilizing the CompuFlow and the dynamic pressure sensing systems that have been developed by Milestone and that are deep-rooted in the company. So I think the best way to identify it is by looking at our STA instrument, which is state-of-the-art injection technology in the dental arena. This instrument gives a precise and a complete injection painlessly, so that both the physician, in this case the dentist, and the patient get an opportunity to benefit from it. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let's take a look at a video. This video is going to be it was published in the US on Fox News, broadcast nationwide, and it demonstrates the full technology.
Going to the dentist can be overwhelming for many people. In fact, it is estimated that as many as 75% of American adults experience some degree of dental fear. One of those patients is 38-year-old Harper Mills.
I had, teeth pulled when I was young. I had 9 teeth pulled before I was 8 years old. And so I think I have built-in, fear about coming to the dentist.
Hey, Harper.
Hey there.
How are you today? Harper has avoided regular checkups and cleanings for years. So when she heard about Dr. Michael Kroshak, a dentist in New York City who specializes in treating patients with phobias, she knew it was time to make an appointment. Dr. Kroshak is helping patients conquer their fear by using new technology to take the pain out of common procedures like fillings, crowns, and even root canals. He ditched those dreaded syringes for the STA single-tooth anesthesia system.
What is bothersome about a dental injection is not the actual needle itself, it's the actual pressure of the fluid going through the tissues. So what the wand STA system does, it allows us to give injections in a fashion that's much more controlled and a slower and gentler.
A computer chip inside the wand helps pinpoint the exact location for the injection and controls the flow of medication into the gums.
We can give a PDL injection to numb a single tooth painlessly without the collateral numbing of the facial tissues. So you can actually numb like a lower back tooth without the lip and chin and tongue getting numb.
When Dr. Kroshak found 2 small cavities in Harper's mouth, he was confident using single-tooth anesthesia would help her overcome her fears.
And it's over. And now I can feel my mouth. You walk out and you can completely, it's like you didn't really have a filling.
An added bonus, there's no extra cost for patients. I'm Dr. Manny, Fox News.
So as demonstrated from the video, the instrument did exactly what it was programmed to do: identify the location, administer a painless injection, and below the pain threshold of the patient, a painless injection. So it validates that we can give and do give an accurate and precise injection painlessly. And for Milestone Scientific, it shows that in the dental arena, we've given over 50 million injections since the inception of the product. So we know what we're doing, we know that the instrument works, and we know we can identify the locations. So let's move ahead and take a look at our investment highlights. We have the wrong screen. So that screen is missing, but let me just go over the highlights. We have patent protection, as Dr. Hochman identified. We have over 24 patents in the U.S. that are available in other parts of the world. We have a distributor already identified prior to 510K approval in the United States and Canada to distribute our epidural instrument. We have registrations that we have filed for both the 510K and the CE for both instruments, the epidural and the intra-articular. We have scientific precision in our injections. We have virtually a painless injection, and in all the instruments, we have a disposable component that allows a recurring income stream that benefits both the distributor as well as the manufacturer, Milestone Medical. We have a highly scalable business volume for production, so we can produce as quick as needed to meet the market demands. And we are also utilizing specialty distributors throughout the world in their respective territories. Now, the competition for this instrument, as Dr. Hockman identified, is the manual syringe. And he's gone through all of the litany of issues, but remember again, a 150-year-old instrument. No one has been able to address the issues until our new instruments, both in the dental and the medical field, have arrived. So we talk about our technology. Again, Dr. Hockman has gone through the technology, presented both the CompuFlow and the dynamic pressure sensing system, which is really the core benefit for the instrument. We know we can do the injections and perform the injections as we've identified. We've done over 50 million of them in the dental arena alone. And the instrument performs exactly how we describe it does work. In the dental industry, our products are sold in 60 different countries through 47 different distributors. So we'll duplicate that process in the medical business to move our two instruments throughout the world market. And this instruments that we're talking about today, the epidural and the intra-articular, include the same software that we've identified, DPS and CompuFlow technology. So once again, to amplify, we have proven technology. We have a current market where we know that it's a sizable market in the billions for our instruments in the medical field. And we have proven technology, and we have a proven market in our dental field. So we know we can do as what we say we can do. Now, let's take a look at our distributor. I mentioned before we have a distributor that's already signed a 3-year agreement with Milestone for the distribution and marketing of our epidural instrument. Trianum is the company. You can see from the screen above, we've signed that agreement. They are the largest supplier of specialty sales and distribution softwares in the healthcare industry in the United States and Canada. And also, they're the largest provider for pain management systems in the US and Canada. Trianum is a unit of a company by the name of Sarnova, which is a $2 billion company. And Trianum has gone through their internal review, as well as taking our product, our instrument, epidural instrument, out to the field to demonstrate it to some of their key opinion leaders, some universities, medical schools, as well as their customer base and their internal sales force. And in all 3 cases, we got a positive that they're interested, they want to move forward with it, and that there is a sizable market. So as a result, Trianum signs a 3-year agreement with Milestone to distribute and market the product, the instrument, the epidural instrument, in the US and in Canada, even before we have 510(k) approval. Significant opportunity for us and significant for the industry. Additionally, as part of the agreement, Trianum is obligated to take 500 instruments plus the related disposables, a separate market for our products, in the first 18 months of the contract. So overall, we have a significant verification that the instrument does what we say it's going to do in the medical industry. We also have a market that's sizable, so we know we can sell millions and millions of dollars of this product. And we also know that we have a customer base that's ready to accept the instrument once we get to a commercialization and 510(k) approval. So it's a great verification for the instrument, the marketability of the instrument, and the technology. The next several slides are market overviews. Mark has already touched on them, so let's take a quick look. The epidural, over $1 billion of revenue in the United States alone. Think about the size for worldwide application and distribution. We know that in the US, it's 8.9 million epidural injections administered yearly. And we know that with our instrument, we reduce the opportunity for injury with the current process. Remember, the current process is the manual syringe, the subjective decision by the doctor on moving forward, where we have the scientific notation to identify the precise location. So a significant benefit. And the studies have shown that we can find the epidural space 100% of the time. So it's a major, major improvement, not only for the practitioner, the physician, but also for the patient. The second instrument is the intra-articular instrument. Again, same issue. The competition, the manual syringe. Benefit for us because we can fly right beyond that. And if we look at the size of the market, we're talking about a market of $7 billion by the year 2015. We also have over 33 million patients that are getting those injections in the U.S. today. Currently, the manual process, the hypodermic syringe, multiple of issues related to that. And we know that in our DPS sensing system, as Dr. Hockman illustrated, we can find the right location to administer the medicament. Let me present a little bit of history now on who Milestone Medical is. Milestone Medical was a scientific joint venture developed by two companies in 2011, Milestone Scientific and 3H Beijing. Both parties have a 50% ownership in the joint venture, and the joint venture chose these two instruments for two specific reasons. First of all, the market size, substantial market size in both instruments, and number two, the competition. Again, the competition is the manual syringe, which we can fly by as far as technology has developed in our instruments. The company was capitalized $1.5 million in cash from the Beijing 3H group, and Milestone Scientific contributed its royalty-free worldwide rights to a use of our patents for the instrument. Milestone Scientific designed, developed, and is commercializing those two instruments. The two instruments are set now to be manufactured in the United States under specific military specifications to make sure that, just like in our dental product, that there is a minor defect rate, less than 1/4% in our dental instrument alone. So let's talk now about successful track record. As we look at history, we know that in the dental arena, we're able to do that. We have given over 50 million injections worldwide, and performance is really not an issue for us. And we also have significant industry recognition. As you can see here, for the dental side, we have over 50 peer reviews, clinical peer reviews, identifying our product as a performer. We also have a key opinion leader, Dr. Stanley Malamed, who's a world-renowned lecturer on injection techniques, local anesthetic delivery. He's a professor at the University of Southern California. He speaks worldwide, and he has two textbooks, which are the textbooks that are used in most universities in the dental and the hygienist educational program. Our instrument, the dental instrument, is located in 4 of those chapters. He also speaks for us on occasion throughout the world. On the screen, you can see our management team, followed up by our scientific advisory board. Substantial group of people, well-trained, identifiable industry experts. So again, we have the backup support to develop this instrument and to perform the necessary clinicals that are required. So overall, I'd like to sum up that in Milestone Medical, we have all the attributes that are necessary for success. We have proven technology. We have a sizable market, and we have a third-party distributor in the U.S. before we have any type of certification, 510K or CE, that is willing to take on the product and to move the product into the market as soon as it is available. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our presentation today. I think that we have at this point the opportunity to open up the floor for questions. A little louder, please.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you for a very interesting presentation. I have a question regarding the FDA approval of your instruments. So when do you expect to get your 510K approval for epidural and an intra-articular instrument?
Well, as you know, in Poland as well as the United States, it's very difficult for us to project what a regulatory agency will do. But the 510K application is already approved on our prior art, so we believe that it will move forward rather quickly. We have filed, we have a meeting with the FDA in October to give us guidance, which they're obliged to do, as to what's required of us to get our 510K. We've already had our preliminary meetings with them. So I think it will move rather quickly.
Okay. And my second question is regarding the application of your instrument in U.S. hospitals. So why it's so important, why hospitals should buy your instrument to administer epidural and intra-articular? So is there any numbers that you can provide us regarding the settlements that insurance companies pay for problems with these injections?
Yeah, there are many reasons. On the operational side, in the United States, an anesthesiologist in the hospital setting costs the institution about $450,000 a year. The anesthesiologist nurse is about $150,000 a year. They miss the injection quite often, between 10 and 30%. So a woman could be going into labor, they give the injection, they wait 20 minutes for profound anesthesia and no anesthesia, and they have to do it again. So that part operationally is very costly. The major problem is when they give the injection, as Dr. Hockman spoke of, and they go too far. They don't realize that they're in the epidural space and they nick the spinal column. That patient may be going into labor, may be part of pain management. That patient then has to enter the hospital, get another epidural, and close that hole. Now, the problem is when that happens, there is litigation. The average settlement is $362,000 when that happens. The patient can have severe migraine headaches for up to 6 weeks. They can have a transient paralysis from the point of the injection down for up to 2 years. They can have a permanent paralysis. And there are other areas. What you brought up with the insurance companies, the rules are changing rapidly in the United States, as the prior speaker mentioned, and the hospitals will now be not covered by insurance for those hospital errors. So it is imperative that the hospital use safer instruments and a safer way of doing the procedure. So we have had 100% success in clinical study with first-year residents finding the location of the epidural space. So we've taken what was before an art that was obviously somewhat dysfunctional, but much better than nothing, and turned it into a science. So we believe for the operations, for the safety, for the insurance, and for the payments, and for the benefit of the whole process, that this will be rapidly taken up in the hospital environment. The other environment, which is bigger, we have 4 million women that give birth in the United States a year. Approximately 2.4 million have an epidural. The other women read the risk factors. This is true throughout the world to various degrees. We believe, as does Trianum, that we could change that global amount so we can increase that market closer to the 4 million number from the 2.4 million number, making it a safer injection. Outside of that environment, where Trianum is not our distributor there. They're only our distributor in the hospital environment. Outside of it, there are approximately 8.9 million injections given in pain management clinics. So we will be bringing on board other distributors throughout the world to deal in those different, in that other sector.
And one more last question. Do you plan to simultaneously sign other agreements with other distributors all around the world, or it's your plan to start selling first in the United States and then later in Europe and other countries, other continents?
We plan to use the proceeds from the offering, which we're doing here, to build our staff of salespeople to negotiate throughout the world. The most difficult negotiation, as you know, is always the first one. And being that we have the major distributor in the United States in the hospital sector already signed on, that is a very strong validation. So we will now travel throughout the world, putting on the other companies. We believe the 510K approval is imminent. It's a matter of timing, but that should be happening, as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Please. Sir.
In the back.
Could you just give us a brief price overview of those products?
It's difficult to do because we are in negotiations in different sectors, and different companies in different geographic areas will commit to different amounts. What we're attempting to do, we're in the disposable business, not the equipment business. What Mr. D'Agostino mentioned, we manufacture our equipment above medical specifications to military specifications, so it never breaks, because we want to sell the disposable. So we have priced the product at a level where the product can go into every single operatory, and the margins are substantial to our company. But it's lower than the price which we could get. For example, if you have a large facility, a birthing facility like in Atlanta in the United States, you have approximately 50 operatories for women giving birth. It's a huge center. If we sold at the top of the line, like an ultrasound, for $40,000, the Institute would probably buy 2, and the anesthesiologist first to grab one and bring it into the room would have it. So the disposable sales would be quite small. We are looking at the disposable market, the razor blade, if you will. So we have developed a product that we could sell at a relatively low level, so it could be ubiquitous. It could be in every single operatory, so that they use it for every single procedure. And our money will be made on the disposable. The margins will be above 70%, I can tell you that. There will be significant margins.
I didn't want you to give us the precise numbers, but just a price range so that we can have an idea. Because you gave us the overview of the market, of the potential, some estimations of the selling numbers, but just to have a price overview.
The price, I will give you a very approximate. The approximate price for the instrument blended worldwide will be below $10,000. For the disposable, it blended worldwide, once again, will be under $125.
Thank you.
You've dragged it out of me.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, and could you also tell us, do you have some current inventory, or use of the proceeds will be to build the inventories, and what we can anticipate in the first year of the distribution? What is your capacity to produce the equipment?
Yeah, what we do is, obviously, we do our own tooling, and of course the design of the instrument is something that's unique to us. So we manufacture the part that you see, the casing, in China, and that's rather simplistic. The most of what is inside of the product are off-the-shelf items that are readily available, so it's easy access. So it's mainly the software. So it is Milestone's habit over the years to purchase ahead for 3 to 5 years of inventory. And we maintain that inventory with our assembler. And what that enables us to do is our cost structure is much lower. Plus, what happens generally over the years is certain parts, if you buy them off the shelf, are discontinued, and then you have to go to another manufacturer to manufacture just for yourself, and those prices become much higher. So though we can increase the price of our products over the years, and have done so, we maintain our cost by using that method. And in fact, part of the money that we raise in the offering will be used to replicate that strategy, which we have done in the dental arena.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One more question. You said that most of your future revenues will come from the disposables.
Yes.
How you, because the disposable, in fact, is just, might say if it's wrong, but it's a needle. So how can you prevent yourself from other companies, from the competition, to replicate and sell it? Because if you don't, if they don't buy those disposables from you, your profits will be much lower than the.
Certainly the key question. No, what we, it's not the needle. The needle is ubiquitous throughout the world. We're not going to bother making something that someone else can make for 25 cents. And we have a transducer in this, and we have an encrypted code that's built into the disposable. If you can, there's a way to show it. And that encrypted code is designed by a military manufacturer that produces products for the F-16, for example. So we believe that it will be virtually impossible to crack that code. And you must have that which you purchase from us in order for the instrument to turn on, to work. So we have handled it that way. We have also handled it in other ways of trade secrets, but we have protected the technology beyond patents. You know. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, we'd like to thank you very much for all. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. One more.
Do you oversee any investments before you start selling your products? And what's your cash position, approximately?
Well, what we're doing now is we have, through our partner, what we have done, which Joseph alluded to, is we have looked for a partner for any number of instruments who would give us value added. In China, we have a partner with a group surrounding that partnership that is in virtually every hospital in China. They have chosen from a very broad platform of technology these two instruments, primarily given the fact that China has about 700 million farmers who are susceptible to osteoarthritis, that there is a great deal of computer use, which is also an issue, and epidurals is the anesthesia of choice, not only in birth, but of operations of short durations below the point of injection. So there is a major market for those two products, and they are in, when you put that whole team together, they are in that area. So they would be the ideal people to have as distributors. But in the negotiation, in order for them to become distributors, they had to fund the complete development of these two instruments, and that's what Milestone Medical is. And that is very important to us because we have a ready-made market in China, and our partners are already have already begun discussions with the SFDA in China regarding these two products. Does that answer you? Okay.
Gentlemen, could you please describe any possible future application of your technologies?
Yeah, there are quite a few. What we will also be doing with the proceeds of the offering, we had an independent study done a number of years ago, which shows us to have over 700 discrete injections that we can do with our technology, which can become the standard of care, which can change those injections for efficacy, for safety. What we would like to do, based on that, we produced these two instruments through Milestone Medical. We have the ability through Milestone Scientific to produce, obviously, a significant amount of other instruments in other areas. They may include where any injection is dangerous, such as ophthalmology. An injection into the globe can be very, very dangerous because of pressurization. Well, we control the pressure. Hair transplant. We have relationships in China with people that sell into different areas. Botox, for example, is a very large area, very high profit area. The problem with Botox, hair transplant, is those are procedures that are voluntary procedures, but they are very, very painful procedures. And in hair transplant in the United States, approximately 50% of the people that go for it, that think that it's most important, we must have our hair, after the first injection, they decide they'll be bald. That's how painful it is, as highly motivated as they are. So we can control that pain. So there are numerous areas. So what we want to do is primarily bring these products to market, but at the same time, after the offering, to do an investigation from an economic perspective. We know the medical perspective, but from an economic perspective, what will be the next 2 or 3 instruments that we want to bring forth? So that's a few months away. We already know the next one, but I didn't want to announce it here. We have the next one, we have the design, we file for patents, and that will be coming shortly. But the ones after that will be based on an independent analysis of the market, both for the economic return to the company and for the ease of penetration. Yes, please.
I just want to clear up one issue. So besides the 2 applications that were discussed here, the intra-articular and the epidurals, the license from Milestone Scientific covers potentially other applications that would be done by Milestone's Medical.
The license to Milestone Medical are for these 2 products only. Milestone Medical has the right to fund other products if it desires to from Milestone Scientific. So Milestone Scientific, after doing its analysis, could in fact go to Milestone Medical and ask them to fund yet another product. And we would lean towards that if the market potential in China were as enormous as it is for these 2 products. Then it would certainly pay to do that.
So in fact, it's safe to assume that the main market, even though you presented the US figures here, that you're targeting longer term is the Asian market, right?
Yeah, the Chinese market in particular is, we now have over 400 million people in the middle class. The Chinese medical system is changing dramatically by the month, not even by the year, with the amount of money going into it. As we all know, on the economic side, both the central government and the provincial governments are putting a great deal of money into technology, into supporting companies that will partner with foreign companies to bring in technology, particularly in the medical sector. So it's an easy avenue for us. Through Milestone Scientific, we have decades of experience in dealing in China successfully. We manufacture our disposables since the beginning, well over 50 million in China. We have people on the ground in the factory. They're not our factories, but we control them. We have never had an incident, problematic incident with the FDA from our products. Our products are enormously safe. whereas the hypodermic syringe that Dr. Hockman showed you is unsafe. I would venture to say that if the hypodermic syringe were introduced today, it would never receive regulatory approval.
Well, that's just one thing that I can't get my mind around. You mentioned that you're using off-the-shelf components in these instruments, and yet somehow nobody's come up with this. I mean, the computers have been around for a number of decades. How come nobody has come up with this method of delivery for these particular applications? What is the gist of this gizmo? Why you guys, and what's in it that nobody else has cracked down?
Right. If you look at the patent portfolio, it relates. We have kind of a fortress around it, but if you're going to go back to the original concept here, is that what we've done is we developed an algorithm, a mathematical formula that takes into account all of the disposables. So you're saying, well, why didn't somebody put all of these disposables into a system previously? Because once you change anything in that system, the length of the tubing, the ID of the tubing, the type of syringe that you're using, you no longer get an accurate reading at the tip of the needle. In fact, there was one patent that tried to do that, and it was owned by a very, very large pharmaceutical company, and they shelved it. Why did they shelve it? Because at that time, they didn't have an algorithm. They just tried to set it up for one particular setup that they had, and then once they changed, and they didn't realize once they changed anything within the system, the accuracy no longer was there. It broke down. So in our algorithm, which is patented, we take into account all of the disposables. We were the first to identify that because the microprocessors were reduced in size, and it was about in the 90s when we first were starting to look, the late 90s when we were looking at this, and we were able to identify all of the variables that you need to know. The temperature of the fluid, the viscosity of the fluid, the type of tubing you're using, the length of the tubing, the needle, the diameter of the needle, all of those things are in there. But we make it seamless. We make it invisible to the end user. Nobody else had ever done that. Okay? And then we made that signal, that pressure, that becomes the controller to the system, so it has a feedback loop. And if you did not have that feedback loop and you were able to do the other thing I just described, it would have no value to you. The fact that we were able to then use that as a feedback loop allowed us to do something that nobody else has ever done. I know it seems like very obvious now that you're seeing it, but that's the beauty of this whole thing. And we have, as we said, a patent portfolio that over the years, that's where a lot of our revenues have gone to protect those concepts. And that's what we have. And they're worldwide, they're global.
So your intellectual property covers, it's basically based in the algorithms in the software.
That's right. And we can sense the pressure in different points within the system. The dental instrument senses it at one location. The medicals are sensing it. So this is what we have been focusing on for over a decade. So when we say we believe we are the world leaders in subcutaneous drug delivery in this niche, we are. I mean, people come to us from all over the place trying to replicate what we have conceptually just to understand, because they want to use this for medical studies that they're performing, because we can differentiate tissue type. So I can place a needle, I can identify a tumor. So we were talking about drug delivery into tumors in the body. Instead of taking a pill or IV, we can discriminate where that tumor is, that lesion is, and put the drug just into the tumor. It's very, very exciting. You know, I mean, you'll hear a lot of pharma companies that you're going to, but you start speaking to them, what is the critical element ultimately after you develop that brainstorm or that revolutionary drug? It's how do you get the drug to that specific site? And we have the solution to that concept. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, just one other thing. It is in the United States, one has to validate every procedure and keep a record of it if you can. You cannot do that with a syringe. That will be a major driver for these products because we can do that.
Okay, I've got a question about, do you have some plans to to perform sales and distribute products in Central and Eastern Europe, for example, in Poland? Do you have a signed contract? And could you explain the structure of sales in US and worldwide?
Well, the medical products that you're looking at for Milestone Medical are presently going through the regulatory process in the European community and the FDA in the United States. We are also having informal discussions with the SFDA in China. So we're moving that process forward. Prior to that, we cannot sell the product legally anywhere. Because it is a 510K, which means it's a substantial equivalent to our prior art, the process is the lowest process to get through the regulatory agencies. And that's why we think this will move relatively quickly. For that reason, and for the fact that the state of the art at this point is the hypodermic syringe, and the morbidity factors are so high that this will remove a great amount of that morbidity. So we believe it'll move quickly for that. As far as if we have distribution for these two products yet in Eastern Europe, no, we do not. Part of our strategy was to first get the major distributor in the United States. They have 94 salespeople, they're in virtually every hospital, to take the product. Once you get that kind of validation, then you reach out and you travel throughout the world and you put together those. We are in the process, we have already engaged through Milestone Medical a head of sales worldwide who will come on board, who's now working but will come on board officially and full-time at the end of the event that we're having here. With that person on board, we will then put together the team to go worldwide. Now one has to make strategic decisions. You can go with one major company who takes a very big part of the world and immediately have a lot of money in the company, maybe a sale of the company, and that's one way to go. But you will not optimize the sale of the product because they may be terrific in Hungary but terrible in Poland. So, and this happens all over the world. So we have to make that strategic decision of how we go from a marketing perspective throughout the world. We're working on it. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have any opinions or contacts to Polish medical staff? I'm asking because there is a big skeptical opinion about the modern technology in Poland. We have some very nice new clinics which look like a science fiction studio, but the people, the patient, often choose another one. Where are the good doctors?
Yeah, interesting. I don't think that skepticism is unique to Poland. But if you look at our prior art in Poland, the Polish market for our dental product is quite good. Our distributor is excellent. They have advertised and marketed not only to the dentists and the clinics in Poland, but also to the public. So there is a very high level of recognition of our product in Poland. So, I don't think that will be a problem. I think when people are aware, which they generally are very much so, particularly in the first world, of the risk factors associated with certain procedures. I mean, if you or I went for a procedure that the doctor said that we have to go for, we would be saying, well, what are my odds? Is it 1,000,000 to 1, 500,000 to 1? That's what I would be looking for if I were going for a procedure. Well, here with the epidural, with the syringe, you stand a 1% chance, of having a significant medical complication. Mortality is a very small part of that, but the morbidity, I mean, you could have that injection and for the rest of your life have problems with your spine. When we went to a meeting with Trianum, our distributor in the United States, and we met the 94 salespeople, and you know, we had our discussions, we showed our product. The woman who organized that whole thing and the woman that was the lead negotiator with me throughout the year and the woman who did all of the due diligence, she was supposed to be there, obviously, and head up this meeting. She couldn't come. The reason she couldn't come was ironic. She had severe back pain. She was going to go in for surgery, but prior to that, they recommended an epidural. She went for the epidural. She went to the epidural by a top anesthesiologist. Of course, she knows them all. And what happened? They went beyond the epidural space and nicked the spinal column. She ended up in the hospital for a number of days in tremendous pain, and she still has the headaches. This is a common event. I think that when people read the risk factors, which is why we only have 2.4 million women out of 4 million women in the United States having the epidural for childbirth. When people are educated, as they are to a large degree in Poland in the dental sector with our equipment, they will want the best for themselves and their children. Yes, sir.
The last question.
Thanks. Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I understand that you're launching your roadshow today. Can you tell us how much money you're seeking to raise by listing in Warsaw? And
do you want to discuss that, Wojciech, or should I?
Perhaps some more details as regards.
If I say Wojciech, half the people may stand up in the room, but.
Thank you for the question. This is a very detailed question, and unfortunately we cannot speak about the numbers publicly because it's a private offering. So if anyone would like to participate in the offering, should contact directly company or the offerer, so WDM. So we cannot speak about the numbers at this presentation, unfortunately.
I'm glad you answered it. So. Thank you very much.